Some encounters are not accidental. There are first glances, fleeting as they may be, that unlock an old door within the soul as if you are not truly meeting someone, but remembering something you've known long ago. In the realm of the unconscious, there is no such thing as coincidence. There are meetings, relationships, turns that seem irrational yet are in fact the precise moments when an inner symbol steps out into the external world to meet you. In the form of another person, we think we are falling in love with them, but in truth, we are standing face to face with a part of ourselves we once lost. We often speak of love as an emotion, a choice, or a matter of fate, but to Carl Jung, who spent his life delving into the deepest layers of the human unconscious, love is not merely the attraction between two individuals. It is an inner ritual, a dialogue between the fragmented parts of the soul searching for a way home to themselves through another person. When someone enters your life with a pull that defies logic, when they touch emotions you cannot name, when reason fades and your soul stirs as if waking from a long sleep, stop and listen, because it may not be just the beginning of a relationship. It may be a call back to your essence. It is the whisper of destiny. It is a meeting between two souls and also the opening of an inner journey where love is no longer a story between two people, but a miracle of reunion between a person and their own self. 1. Destiny-driven love is a whisper from the unconscious. There are encounters that seem accidental yet disrupt the entire axis of one's life. A fleeting glance in a crowd, a brief meeting that leaves a lasting imprint, a stranger the heart suddenly recognizes without reason. These moments are not orchestrated by logic, nor are they merely the play of emotions. Carl Jung called this phenomenon synchronicity, a sacred alignment where the inner world and the outer world mysteriously merge into one. When an event, a person, a moment arrives precisely at the threshold between what was and what is about to be, between collapse and awakening, it ceases to be random. It becomes a whisper from the unconscious. In Jung's psychoanalytic lens, the unconscious is not just a storehouse of repressed desires or forgotten wounds. It is also the dwelling place of living symbols, of archetypal images inherited from the collective unconscious, the deeper layer that connects us all beyond time and the ego. Fateful encounters, then, are vivid manifestations of untold stories seeking to continue their script through present life. And love, in this context, is not merely a feeling. It is a signal, a calling, a ritual that opens the gates of transformation. When we meet someone who shatters our principles, melts our defenses, renders reason obsolete, it may be that we are standing before a symbol of inner rebirth. That person does not arrive as a reward or punishment. They arrive as a messenger from the soul, and the message they bring cannot always be translated into words. It might be an inexplicable familiarity, a peace never before known, or, conversely, a kind of panic, an instability, the yearning so intense we do not understand it. But in any case, it points to the fact that a door within us has cracked open. Jung believed that synchronistic events do not follow conventional cause and effect logic. They are not outcomes of prior actions, but uncanny alignments between an external event and an internal shift. In other words, when someone appears at the exact moment you're on the edge of change, collapse, or rebirth, they are not there to complete you, but to awaken the part of your soul that is rising. In the language of symbolic psychology, destiny-driven love is the arrival of a living symbol, representing something forgotten, repressed, or never given a chance to awaken. That person may not be perfect, but they will activate something incredibly real and profoundly deep within you. Perhaps it is a frozen feeling, perhaps a buried wound, or a sacred image you once longed for but never believed could live in the everyday. And in that moment, love ceases to be an emotion. It becomes a test, a ritual, a gateway. Jung believed that the process of individuation, the journey toward becoming one's true self, cannot be separated from such encounters. Because only through destiny-driven love can we find the courage to face the shadowed parts of the ego that have never been brought to light. Only when pulled from the comfort zone by someone who both mesmerizes and destabilizes us, someone we simultaneously want to flee from and cannot let go of, do we begin to confront what we have long denied in ourselves. Destiny-driven love, in essence, does not come to make us immediately happy. It comes to unlock a depth within us that we've never dared to touch. And the process of unlocking, if we are brave enough, will lead us to a version of the self that is wider, deeper, and more authentic than before. We often think that finding the right person is a matter of luck. But in Jung's view, the right person is not the one who makes us most comfortable, but the one who triggers our most powerful transformation. They may not stay forever, but they leave behind a change that cannot be reversed. They arrive as a strike of fate, and if we are awake enough, we will understand the treasure was never about possessing them. It was about who we became after meeting them. Destiny-driven love is not for the faint of heart. It is not a fairy tale. It is a rite of passage into the soul. When that person enters your life like a dream, and then dissolves every shield you built, you are forced to confront yourself. No more places to hide. No more excuses to offer. Just one bared truth. I never truly knew who I was until I met them. And if you dare to stay not with them, but with yourself after they've arrived, then destiny-driven love becomes something far beyond romance. It becomes a spiritual milestone, a moment when the soul opens its eyes, a time when the unconscious speaks, a turning point where the self realizes, from here on, there is no returning to who I used to be. 2. Anima, animus, the lost inner images projected onto the other. We believe that when we love, we see the other person. But what Carl Jung revealed is this: when we love, we project onto the other. We do not see them as they are, but rather the part of ourselves that has gone missing, a part never fully lived, never understood, never touched by the light of consciousness. That person merely happens to resemble it. In Jung's symbolic psychoanalysis, there exist two deep psychological archetypes within every individual: Anima, the inner feminine image in a man, and animus, the inner masculine image in a woman. These are not about biological gender, but about the opposite internal energy, the part we have not yet integrated, and therefore must seek through another. When we meet someone who stirs the heart with unusual intensity, who silences reason, who dissolves resistance, it is often because the anima or animus within us has been awakened. For the man, anima represents all that is soft, deep, emotional, mysterious, and simultaneously chaotic and irrational, which he fears to confront in himself. The woman who captivates him might embody a sense of freedom he buried, a feeling of being understood he never allowed himself to feel, or a longing for authenticity he once believed was forbidden. But instead of recognizing those things as internal, he projects them onto her. He does not realize that what he is in love with is not the woman herself, but the inner image, the internal feminine he has never truly touched. For the woman, animus is the part that reasons, leads, acts, and anchors, qualities often stripped from her or ones she was taught not to embody. When she feels an overwhelming attraction to a calm, decisive man with direction, it may not be because he perfectly possesses those qualities, but because he activates the dormant animus within her. She believes she loves him, but in truth, she is trying to retrieve a part of herself that has long been forgotten. And this is the tragedy of unconscious love. The other is forced to become the symbol of what we are lacking, longing for, or refusing to face within ourselves. We don't love their real self. We love the projection. We love the role. We love the mirror. But no one can maintain the role of a symbolic figure forever. And when they begin to live authentically, showing aspects that don't match the anima or animus in our minds, we feel disappointed, betrayed, as if love is no longer what it used to be. Love hasn't died, the projection is withdrawing, and this moment, if misunderstood, becomes the cause of countless breakups. Endless questions like, why have they changed? Why aren't we like we were? But Jung saw it clearly: they haven't changed. The image we cast onto them is collapsing, and that collapse is the real opportunity for love, if we are brave enough to step beyond the illusion. When anima, animus operates from the unconscious, we love to seek, we love to fill a void, we love to restore something lost. But when these archetypes are brought into conscious awareness, we begin to see the other is not here to complete us, but to point toward a part of the soul we need to return to. The woman is not the door to happiness for the man. She is only the outer image of softness, emotion, and intuition that he must learn to integrate within himself. The man is not the pedestal for the woman to cling to. He is merely the reflection of strength, logic, and direction that she needs to awaken from within. And if each person understands that such intense emotion is a signal to turn inward, Then love ceases to be dependency. It becomes a map of inner direction. At that point, the man no longer demands that the woman always be gentle, always shield the fragile part of him. He learns to converse with Anima, to listen to his emotions and intuition, to sit with wounds he once avoided by using her. The woman no longer expects the man to always be strong, to always lead. She learns to hear animus, the clear and independent intellect within her, and knows how to stand on her own, to navigate, to walk her own path. Love, then, is no longer a refuge for lack. It is a place where two people learn to integrate themselves. No one is burdened with healing the other. No one must maintain an ideal image to be loved. Both step out of illusion to truly see one another, and to love not because the other is someone they need, but because they are someone they now recognize. Jung saw long ago, to love another is, in truth, a closed circle of searching for the self. When we are awake enough to recognize the anima animus within the mind, we no longer project, we begin to love with open eyes, not the dreamy eyes of the unconscious. And that kind of love, though no longer fevered as at first, carries a rare endurance. It no longer rests on projection, but on the companionship of two souls learning how to become whole. Free. The collapse of projection and the doorway into true love. No one enters love without carrying a dream, a beautiful image, a hidden expectation, an illusion woven from unfulfilled desires. When we fall in love, we rarely see the other person as they are. We see the idealized part of ourselves we have projected onto them. Carl Jung called this phenomenon projection, the mechanism of the unconscious. It is a deep psychological instinct, both magical and dangerous. Magical, because it makes love erupt like a miracle. Dangerous, because we end up loving an image, not a person. And then comes the moment, the shadow of that image begins to crack. The once gentle person becomes distant. The once strong person shows weakness. The one who once made us feel at home suddenly becomes the reason we want to leave. We think they have changed, but in truth, they were never who we imagined. They are simply beginning to live authentically, and we are not ready to see them as a real human being. With all the imperfections, unmet ideals, and unromantic edges, that moment is when projection collapses. And if we lack awareness, we call it betrayal. In reality, no one betrayed anyone. The only thing that was betrayed was the dream we built in our minds. And that moment, according to Jung, is not the end of love, but the first threshold into real love. True love does not begin when we are infatuated. True love begins when we are disillusioned and still choose to stay. Projection is how the unconscious helps us approach the unlived parts of our personality. But if we stop there, loving only the image, refusing to see the person, then the relationship remains a dream with an expiration date. To love a real person, we must let the image fall. We must witness that they are no longer what we fantasized. We must face the disappointment, the confusion, the letdown, and still be brave enough to ask, so who really am I loving? Jung once wrote, the collapse of projection is a necessary condition for love to mature. Because only when the image withdraws can the real person emerge. And only when we see them as they are, not glorious, not omnipotent, not bearing the idealized face of our unconscious, we choose to love them with conscious awareness. This collapse, for many, is unbearable. They feel hurt, feel that love is not like it used to be, feel the emotions have faded, not realizing the emotion is not dead. It is being transformed, from intoxication to clarity, from fantasy to reality, from need to choice. The moment projection breaks is like removing the mask we ourselves placed on the other's face. And when that mask falls, if we still have enough gentleness to look at that person with their fears, wounds, flaws, and insecurities, then love is born for the first time, not in a storm of feelings, but in a truthful gaze. And the strange thing is, when the image breaks, not only does the other appear, but so do we. We begin to see clearly. What was I asking for? What role did I need them to play? Did I love truly, or just want to be fulfilled? And what inside me, the lack, the pain, the longing, pushed me into this relationship? The collapse of projection is not only the doorway to true love, it is the doorway back to the self. It forces us inward, it urges us to clear out outdated ideals. It teaches us to love from a place no longer rooted in lack. Because only when we love from inner wholeness can we see the other as a companion, not as a healer. True love begins when no one is forced to carry another's image, when the other no longer has to be always strong, always soft, always right, but is allowed to simply be. And when we no longer love to find refuge, but love as an act of choice, a process of living, learning, and growing together. Projection is not evil, it is the first step, but if we do not go beyond it, we remain trapped in short-lived feelings and never taste the quiet depth of mature love. It is like loving a painting instead of loving the artist. But when we dare to face the moment of disillusionment and choose to stay, to learn, to touch something deeper, love no longer intoxicates us for a few months. It becomes a transformative journey. Jung called this the beginning of conscious love, where emotions do not disappear, but are transfigured into depth. There, love is no longer a dazzling light, but a warm flame in the night, not blinding, but enduring, not burning, but enough to warm the path through the dark. Together. 4. The shadow, the true test of deep love, when love transcends the stage of projection and steps into the realm of reality. A quiet but powerful phenomenon begins to emerge, the shadow. For Carl Jung, the shadow is not something evil, it is a part of the self that we have once denied, hidden away, or lacked the awareness to see. It is a collection of emotions, instincts, and behaviors that we could not integrate into our ideal self, and thus, we banish it to the unconscious. But what is rejected does not disappear. It waits for the right moment to return, and deep love is the place where the shadow rises most powerfully. We often believe that love makes people better. That is true, but not enough. True love not only highlights the light within us, but also pulls the darkness into the light. It makes us feel things we never dared to feel: jealousy, fear, control, anger, abandonment, anxiety, feelings of inadequacy, unworthiness of love. These emotions are not born from the other person. They simply awaken the dormant shadow within us. That is why the deeper the relationship, the more likely it is that we crash into our own dark side. And that is what makes mature love both romantic and painful, a journey where the other person is no longer an object for fulfillment, but a mirror, reflecting both what we love and what we hate about ourselves. When they hurt us, sometimes they did nothing wrong. They simply touched a wound that hasn't yet healed, and the shadow rises. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." In love, this becomes clearer than ever. When we are unaware of our shadow, we project it onto the other person, then blame them for what we ourselves have not dared to face. We say they are selfish, but in truth, we have never allowed ourselves to ask for what we need. We say they are cold, but in truth, we are afraid of being rejected. We say they do not love us enough, but in truth, we have never truly loved ourselves the right way. The shadow does not come to destroy love. It comes to test the depth of that love. It asks us, do you truly want to see yourself clearly? Can you love another when they are no longer a refuge for your idealized self? Can you sit with fear, with pain, with the imperfect parts of yourself, without running, without blaming, without reacting from instinct? In those moments, true love begins to challenge the defense mechanisms of the ego. It demands absolute honesty, not just with the other, but with ourselves. In arguments, misunderstandings, silent treatments, and widening gaps, our reactions are not merely emotional outbursts, but the unprocessed history of our soul. And if we do not realize this, we will keep repeating the same patterns, blaming the other, thinking, I always pick the wrong person, falling into the same cycle of hurt, without realizing that the first one who needs healing is ourselves. But if we are brave enough to look at the shadow without fleeing, love will begin to transform. It becomes a spiritual forge, where raw emotions are melted down, where the ego is reshaped, where wounds are no longer burdens, but gateways to awakening, because the shadow is not an enemy. It is the part of us we once abandoned, and deep love is the first place it is welcomed back. However, not everyone can pass this test. Many, upon seeing the darkness in their partner, will leave, thinking, this person is not right for me. They're too toxic. This love was wrong from the start. But the truth is, love is not wrong. Love simply reveals what we have carried all along. If we are conscious enough not to blame, not to criticize, not to retreat, but to ask, what is this emotion telling me about myself? Where did this pain begin? Is it really from the other person? What am I trying to control, and which wounded part of me is that coming from? Then at that moment, love is no longer just a relationship, it becomes a path of self-transformation. Carl Jung never promised that love would bring happiness. He never romanticized love. On the contrary, he emphasized, true love is a courageous journey because it will make you face yourself in your rawest form. And for that reason, not everyone dares to love deeply. Not everyone dares to let someone touch their shadow and stay. To look at it together, to heal it together. But if you are someone who is ready, then that love will not only change your relationship, it will change you. You no longer love in search of perfection. You love to learn how to embrace the truth of yourself and of the other. You are no longer afraid of anger, insecurity, wounds, because you know they are not the end of love. They are where love begins its real work. 5. Love is a process of integration, not a place to hide. We enter love with a silent illusion that someone will see us, understand us, heal us, and fill the void we've carried for so long. We never say it out loud, but we live by it. We place our hopes in someone, call it true love, and secretly expect them to become the shelter for the torn parts of ourselves. But Carl Jung pointed out a difficult truth. Love is not a place of refuge. It is a process of integration. When we love without awareness, we love from lack. We enter a relationship not as a whole being, but as a child carrying wounds. We seek validation to compensate for the fear of not being good enough. We crave the other's presence as a way to escape the loneliness rooted deep in our subconscious. We need them to make us feel worthy, because we have never learned how to give that to ourselves. But true love does not operate on the principle of escape. It does not serve a wounded ego. It does not exist to make us comfortable. On the contrary, love is the place where all wounds are exposed, and instead of shielding us, it forces us to face them. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of a soul returning to its wholeness. Every deep relationship is a portal for this process to begin. The other does not come to protect us from pain, but to activate that pain so we can see it, listen to it, understand it, and ultimately release it. Love, at its deepest layer, is not satisfaction, but a form of spiritual dialogue, a space where two souls reflect one another. And each emotional reaction, from sweetness to intensity, is an invitation to look inward. The other does not cause our pain. They simply pull the curtain back, revealing the unhealed wounds within. And when we find ourselves angry, controlling, hurt, jealous, or feeling abandoned, that is not a signal that they are wrong, but a sign that something within us has not yet been embraced. When love becomes a place to hide, we cannot grow. We only cling. We do not love the other as they are, but as a role designed to heal our inner world. And eventually, when they can no longer maintain that role, we are disappointed, but the fault is not in them. The fault lies in the expectation that love is comfort, rather than a journey of self-integration. What is integration? It is when we look into a powerful emotion without judgment. When we realize we are reacting not because of what the other did, but because an old wound has just been touched. When we pause, and instead of asking, "Why did they do this to me?" we begin to ask, "What is this feeling saying about the part of me that remains unhealed? What am I demanding that I have never given myself? Do I truly love them, or just love the safety they bring to the insecure version of me?" This process is not pleasant. It is not romantic. It does not fit into fairy tales. But it is precisely then that love begins to do its real work, transformation. It is no longer the applause of two egos, but the awakening of two souls. The other, once no longer a shelter to hide in, becomes a companion in the journey of inner renewal. No one carries the other, no one changes for the other, but both grow through every conflict, every silence, every moment of disconnection. And instead of seeing these things as signs of collapse, they are seen as signs that another layer of projection is falling away. In that space, love is no longer an assertion of self. It becomes a shedding expectations, images, and roles, shedding the need to be loved the right way, shedding even the illusion that the other is responsible for our happiness. And the strange thing is, only when no one is trying to be someone else's support, the relationship becomes more solid than ever. Because it is no longer a refuge, but a spiritual furnace. a living space where both dared to be present, dared to speak truth, dared to be wounded, and dared to walk through that pain together. Jung never believed in perfect love. He believed in awakened love, where each person does not love to escape their darkness, but to illuminate it. Love, then, is not a place to hide. It is fire. It burns away the false. It melts the rigid ego. It wears down expectations. But if we can withstand that fire without turning away, without blaming, then a new form of self will be born. And love, at that point, is no longer something we need to survive. It becomes a presence through which we live truthfully. 6. Love begins when no one is playing a role anymore. There is a truth few dare to face. Most romantic relationships begin with roles. One plays the savior, one plays the wounded, one plays the strong, invulnerable one plays the sweet, agreeable caretaker. Both enter the emotional stage with unspoken scripts, not because they are deceitful, but because they are seeking something they haven't yet dared to live out within themselves. Carl Jung called this the persona, the social mask. Each of us has a persona, an image we perform outwardly to be accepted, to avoid being hurt, to be loved, and the most subtle thing is, in love, the persona doesn't disappear, it simply transforms into something more pleasant, more romantic, but still deeply rooted in control. We don't truly show up to the other as a whole being. We show up as the version we believe they will love. The man doesn't allow himself to be vulnerable, so he wears the mask of stable, logical, needing no one. The woman is afraid of being abandoned, so she becomes sweet, obedient, always understanding, never demanding. Neither of them is living truthfully, but because the early stage of love is so addictive, filled with dopamine, expectations, and fantasies, we don't realize that we're loving each other's performances. But true love doesn't begin on that stage. True love begins only when both drop the act and dare to reveal themselves. When the man dares to say, "I'm also scared, I'm also uncertain, I don't know everything you think I do." When the woman dares to admit, "I'm also angry, I'm also selfish, I also have days when I'm not pleasant and cannot please anyone." When no one is trying to be easier to love, when no one fears, "If I show my true self, I'll lose them," that is when love stops being a performance. It becomes true, and that truth, though not glamorous, holds a vitality thousands of times more enduring than romantic highs. Because in the end, no one can keep performing forever. Eventually, the mask will slip, perhaps through a fight, a moment of weakness, or simply the exhaustion of not being oneself. And if the other person is not mature enough to meet the truth, the relationship will collapse, not because love has died, but because it was never rooted in authenticity. Carl Jung emphasized that the essence of every deep relationship is soul-level honesty. Not perfection, not a polished image, but the courage to show up, unguarded, unpolished, unadorned, when no one is acting anymore. A new phenomenon begins to unfold. We start to truly see each other, not with infatuated eyes, but with clarity. When we see the other as they are, we stand before a choice. Turn away, because we can't tolerate the truth, or stay, because we recognize that the real person, with all their shadows, is what's truly worth loving. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, as two people gradually let go of the ideal partner archetype to become ordinary, but real. No longer needing to be perfect, no longer fearing judgment, no longer striving to please. Both begin to live side by side as two beings returning home to themselves. And that is the magic of awakened love. It allows us to no longer perform. We no longer have to hide our tears, no longer have to suppress our anger, no longer have to lie about our feelings, no longer have to prove our worth. In that space, love is no longer something to hold on to, but something to nurture. No one is holding on to anyone. There is only daily presence, kindness in disagreement, honesty in needs, and compassion when each other's shadows arise. And that, the acceptance of imperfection, becomes a bond stronger than any promise. When no one is playing a role anymore, love becomes light, not light because it's free of challenges, but light because it's no longer heavy with pretending, no longer haunted by the fear. What if I'm not the image they fell in love with? Because now, I know I'm loved even when I'm just myself. Jung once said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." In love, this means we do not truly love until we dare to sit with each other's darkness and choose not to run. In the end, the love you call destiny is not the perfect compatibility between two people, but the sacred activation between two souls on the journey back to wholeness. When projections dissolve, when the shadow emerges, when the masks fall and the roles come to an end, if you still stay, if you still look at the other with eyes no longer filled with demands, then this is no longer ordinary love. It is love refined through truth, through awakening, through each layer of the unconscious brought into light. Carl Jung once said, "Love does not complete you, it awakens you, because the other does not come to fill you, but to help you see the part of you that has never been lived." No one can rescue you from existential loneliness, but the right person, if they come at the right time, can hold your hand as you walk into the deepest part of yourself. True love, therefore, is not a destination, it is a journey, not the pursuit of what fits, but the unraveling of what is false. Not someone entering your life to complete you, but a return to the part of your being that was once forgotten. And when you look at someone, no longer as a symbol, no longer as a healing project, no longer as a romantic hope, but as a soul also seeking their way back, just like you, then love no longer needs a definition, it only needs to be lived.